when they did ultimately find Anastasia dead.
Where is her purse? Where is her phone? Why was she in that house? Why would someone dump my beautiful daughter in that awful home? We don't understand what happened. We just want answers.
Melissa Romanello is having sleepless nights after her daughter disappeared and was then found dead days later. Her daughter Anastasia Hamilton was found in an abandoned house in Slavic Village. She doesn't know why someone would do this to her.
She had bruises and lacerations, and that there was definitely some very suspicious activity, and she was put there.
Hamilton was last seen.
All right, so there is Banville. Just entered into court.
This afternoon with his attorney, Mr. Thomas Shaughnessy.
So he pled guilty a few days ago to involuntary manslaughter, corrupting another with drugs, offenses against a human corpse, and tampering with evidence. We will keep you live now as Judge Stephen Gall presides over this and ultimately sentences.
And good afternoon, gentlemen. We are here for sentencing today. I would like for everyone to know in the audience, first of all, be sure to have your phones all put away. I would also like to again apologize to you all for being a little tardy this morning, or this afternoon rather. I would also like to acknowledge that I can imagine for most of you this is a important and if not an emotional day for you all. However, I do expect you all to maintain appropriate courtroom decorum. My deputies have my full authority to maintain safety and security, and if anyone does or says anything that they feel impacts on courtroom security, they will act swiftly and immediately and with my approval. So just ask you all to keep that in your minds. So we are here for sentencing. We're in a prior date and time. Mr. Banville entered a guilty plea first in case 636305. That case he had back in 2019 entered a guilty plea to count 3. While the indictment as it was charged, or as it was amended, is a count of drug trafficking as a felony of the first degree. He also pled guilty to count 5. As it was amended by the deletion of the firearms specification, it remains a charge of drug trafficking as a felony of the 5th degree with various forfeiture specifications. There's the various forfeiture specifications on count 3 as well. He had also pled guilty to count 25, which is a charge of having weapons while under disability as a felony of the 3rd degree, and then to count 26 as charge, which is a count of possessing criminal tools as a felony of the 5th degree. Next, in case 665107, Mr. Banville previously entered guilty pleas essentially to the entire indictment. Count 1 is a charge of drug trafficking as a felony of the 1st degree with various schoolyard and forfeiture specifications. Count 2 is a charge of drug possession as a felony of the 1st degree, again with various forfeiture specifications. Count 3 is also a charge of drug trafficking as a felony of the 1st degree with various forfeiture specifications and a schoolyard specification. Count 4 is a charge of drug possession as a felony of the 1st degree with various forfeiture specifications. Count 5 is a charge of drug trafficking as a felony of the 1st degree with various forfeiture specifications and the schoolyard specification. Count 6 is a charge of drug possession as a felony of the 2nd degree with various forfeiture specifications. Count 7 is a charge of drug trafficking as a felony of the 1st degree with a schoolyard specification and various forfeiture specifications. Count 8 is a charge of drug possession as a felony of the 2nd degree with various forfeiture specifications. Counts 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14 are each charges of drug possessions as felonies of the 5th degree. Count 15 is a charge of possessing criminal tools as a felony of the 5th degree. Count 16 is a charge of having weapons while under disability as a felony of the 3rd degree. Count 17 is a charge of identity fraud as a felony of the 5th degree. Next, in case 672644, Mr. Banville previously entered a guilty plea to the single count in that indictment, which is a charge of escape as a felony of the 3rd degree. And then finally, in case 677123, where prior date and time Mr. Banville entered guilty pleas to count 1, essentially the indictment, but a count 1 as a charge, which is a count of involuntary manslaughter as a felony of the 1st degree, to count 2 as indicted a charge of gross abuse of a corpse as a felony of the 5th degree, to count 3 as indicted a charge of tampering with evidence as a felony of the 3rd degree, to count 4 as indicted a charge of corrupting another with drugs as a felony of the 2nd degree, count 6 as indicted a charge of drug trafficking as a felony of the 5th degree, to count 7 a charge of permitting drug abuse as a felony of the 5th degree, to count 8 as charged a count of possessing criminal tools as a felony of the 5th degree, to count 9 as indicted, counts 9 and 10 actually, charges of having weapons while under disability as a felony of the 3rd degree, count 11 as charged a count of drug possession as a felony of the 5th degree with a 1-year firearm specification. Also to count 12 as indicted a charge of drug possession as a felony of the 5th degree with the 1-year firearm specification. To count 13 as indicted a charge of drug trafficking as a felony of the 5th degree with a 1-year firearm specification. To count 14 a charge of drug possession as indicted as a felony of the 5th degree with the 1-year firearm specification. To count 15 as indicted a charge of drug trafficking as a felony of the 5th degree with the 1-year firearm specification. And finally, to count 16 as indicted a charge of drug possession as a felony of the 5th degree with the 1-year firearm specification. Gentlemen, at the time of the plea on the last 3 cases anyways, there was a couple of items that we discussed and I want to make sure I have it recalled correctly. One of which is in case 677123. It's my understanding that each of the firearm specifications on counts 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 would merge into one firearm specification. Is that still the state's position, Mr. Maver?
It is, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Shaughnessy, you concur?
I concur with you.
All right. Then I know that we had a little bit of a discussion at the time of the plea, but also prior to coming on the bench here in chambers with respect to merger. And again, let's start with case 677123. Gentlemen, maybe Mr. Paul, you can confirm. It's my understanding that the state's position is that counts 4 and 7 would merge into count 1. Is that still the state's position?
It is, Your Honor.
You elect to proceed to sentencing in count 1?
We do, Your Honor.
All right, and then also counts 11 and 12 would merge together, as well as counts 13 and count 14. Is that still your position?
It is, Your Honor.
And I believe you're electing to proceed on the drug trafficking counts in 11, 13, and 15?
We are, Your Honor.
All right, any contrary thoughts or objections, Mr. Shaughnessy?
I believe we've discussed counts 9 and 10 merging.
We did.
9 and 10 would merge together as well, correct. All right. Then in case 665107, maybe Mr. Lavelle, this might have been your case, but I believe it was conversations about counts 1 and 2 merging together, both a charge of possession and trafficking. Counts 3 and 4, same thing. Counts 5 and 6, as well as counts 7 and 8. And the state would elect to proceed on the drug trafficking counts in 1, 3, 5, and 7. Is that still the state's position?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right. Any objection or contrary thoughts, Mr. Shaughnessy?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. The other thing I wanted to confirm, Mr. Shaughnessy, is with respect. Well, in case 636305, so that's the case of, well, here, on the drug offenses, Mr. Shaughnessy, were there felonies of the first or second degree? I believe I articulated that they are mandatory time and mandatory fine penalties associated with each. Is that your recollection as well?
Yes, Your Honor, and Kenneth and I certainly discussed, our discussions, rather, that the felonies of first and second degree do carry mandatory time.
All right.
And come with mandatory fines unless he's found to be indigent.
Right, okay. Okay, anything else by way of a preliminary matter on behalf of the state?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Shaughnessy?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right. Then proceeding for sentencing for everyone's appreciation, Mr. Paul, Mr. Maver, Mr. Lavelle, I'll hear first from the state any remarks that either gentleman that you might have and anyone else who is here that would like for me to hear from them on behalf of the victim in this manner. And then Mr. Shaughnessy, I'll hear from you. And Mr. Banville, while you wouldn't be required to say anything to me on your own behalf, but if there is something you would like for me to know, it'd be at that final moment in time. With that then, Mr. Paul, Mr. Maver, Mr. Lavelle, gentlemen?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, may I address the court from the podium?
Yeah, of course, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, I did file this morning
Yeah,
a...
and I'm sorry, Mr. Paul, for
Yes, Judge.
interrupting you, but I did receive your sentencing memorandum that you had provided to the court. I also received just what I'll characterize as a very lengthy and detailed letter that was drafted on behalf of Ms. Hamilton from her mom, along with associated photographs and text messages. Again, your sentencing memorandum, as well as states exhibits 1 through 30. So I apologize for that. The other thing I did review, Mr. Shaughnessy, is I did have the opportunity to pull up Mr. Banville's PSI that was generated. It is dated January 20th of 2019. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to review that document.
I have been given a copy of that.
All right, very good. So I've reviewed those. I apologize, Mr. Paul. Please continue.
That's quite all right, Judge. We appreciate you reviewing the memorandum, and importantly, Ms. Romanello's letter on behalf of her daughter, Anastasia. Your Honor, first, I acknowledge as a prosecutor that, and a professional in this building, that we oftentimes, too often, see involuntary manslaughter overdose deaths come through this court. It happens too frequently in our community. And does not appear to be slowing down anytime soon, unfortunately. But somehow, when I first looked at this case, we drafted charges initially back in May and June of last year. This one just felt different. And it's because of everything this defendant did after he provided drugs to Anastasia. It's everything that he did after to her that it reaches a level of callousness, dehumanization, selfishness, degradation that frankly is unsettling and remarkable in and of itself. So we initially indicted it as gross abuse of a corpse and tampering with evidence based on what we viewed to be the state of Anastasia Hamilton when she was found in the house in Slavic Village back on May the 25th, 2022. The reality, though, is that, a lot of times victims and their representatives and their families will come to me and want to know how exactly their loved one died and why. And it seems inept sometimes, but I have to tell them I don't know, and you might not ever know. The reality is our system of criminal justice isn't set up to answer how or why. How is going to be a question that might linger and carry forward even as they leave this building today, and why is something that's personal to this defendant. Even if he were to tell them why he did what he did, they don't have to accept what he says is true or not. So it does feel inept that, you know, I have to, as a prosecutor, inform them of those two essential realities, is that they might not ever know the answer to those questions. But what I saw, Your Honor, was that Anastasia Hamilton was a person who was loved by many, was discarded by this defendant like she was little more than a piece of trash. And it hurts me to have to say that in front of a room full of people who loved her. But that's everything that he did afterwards that made this case a little different than most. For that reason, Your Honor, I would thank, first of all, homicide detectives Tim Kramer, Sarah Hudson, and Andy Hayduck, because between the time when she was found and the many months afterwards, they, as a group, refused to stop investigating, continued to pursue leads, continued to interview anyone that would give them any information about where it is that she overdosed and how it is that she got to the house in Slavic Village. And what ultimately resulted was in December of 2022, we were able to re-indict this case properly for what it really is, and that is involuntary manslaughter, corrupting another with drugs, gross abuse of a corpse, etc. We know from investigation, well, I shouldn't say we know, we believe that Anastasia was provided drugs by this defendant by virtue of his plea. He acknowledges that. We believe that the overdose happened at an apartment downtown. And we believe that the defendant, and perhaps with the assistance of another, transported her body to a house where she was found in Slavic Village, a drug house that this defendant operated, frequented, and sold drugs from routinely throughout the years. And he put her there in such a fashion, very crudely, that would make it appear as though she overdosed there. But even a cursory glance of her as she existed in that moment in time would suggest anything but that. She had post-mortem injuries throughout her body. Just the appearance of her would suggest that she was actually drugged there by him with the assistance of perhaps another. That other person, if that person exists, we will probably never know who that person is. And so again, in December of 2022, we were able to properly and re-indict this to at least provide some justice for Anastasia at a level commensurate with the harm that this defendant inflicted upon her. I did review his previous criminal history, Your Honor, and what I reviewed tells me, and I don't mean to sound flippant about this, but you can't say we didn't try, right? Beginning in 2009, he had a litany of drug cases that made their way all the way to 2017. And he was actually successful at least once with treatment. But what I saw from just the public record was a series of missed opportunities. And I think it's fair to say that any jurist in this building who has any ounce of compassion, the last thing they ever want to do is send a drug addict to prison. But he was sent to prison multiple times for that. But we also offered him treatment time and time again, and he simply didn't avail himself of the value opportunities that were provided to him. I would also thank, Your Honor, and I'll conclude my remarks at this point, but I had the pleasure of meeting Detective Kevin Callahan from Cleveland Division of Police today as well. When this was initially just a missing persons case, I took note of all of the work that Detective Callahan did on the front end, and it was clear that when a missing person case comes in like this, that every minute on the front end is important. It's more important than the next. And ultimately, he was there that day as well, but put in quite a bit of work in order to find Anastasia in the 3 to 4 days when that case was open. And so we appreciate his efforts as well. Your Honor, I would conclude my remarks there and rely upon the memorandum that we did file. And if the court would indulge, we'd like the opportunity for Ms. Romanella to be heard.
Of course.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Would you be kind to start by telling me your name for the record, please?
Melissa Romanello.
Okay.
Your Honor, may I?
Of course.
hand you these photos?
Yeah, why don't you make sure Mr. Paul has seen them and Mr. Shaw has seen them as well?
I've seen it. I'll be to your left. She'll be to your right. Okay, you'll be fine.
Okay, thank you.
And so I have no problem with you wanting to read something, but just be mindful. I know, because she probably won't yell at you, but I know I get yelled at if I read too fast that our talented reporters can type. So just be mindful of that, to kind of speak slow, okay?
Okay, I will. I am nervous. I will
Yeah.
do my best.
So here, two things. Take a deep breath, because I'm going to take a look at the photos that you've given me. And then the other thing I want you to know is, and I'm not in a hurry today. Again, I apologize. I'm sure you've been waiting for this moment for a very long time, and I've kept you waiting for an additional hour today. But I am not in a hurry otherwise. And so you feel free to take whatever time you need to stumble through this together, to take your time to collect your thoughts, and we'll get through it together. Does that sound like a plan?
Yes, sir.
All right. Who's the little baby? Is that her?
That is, those are my 3 children.
Okay, very good.
Sorry, some of them are sticky.
It's all right. Okay, what would you like for me to know?
Hello, I just want to introduce myself to the court. My name is Melissa Romanello, and I am Anastasia Yvonne Hamilton's mother. Today, I stand before you with a heavy heart, burdened by the unbearable loss of my beloved daughter, Anastasia Hamilton. It is with profound sorrow that I recount the events that led to her tragic and untimely death. I implore you, Your Honor, to consider the gravity of the heinous crimes committed by the defendant and to ensure that he receives the maximum sentence the law allows. My daughter was a remarkable soul, an epitome of kindness, love, and unwavering determination. Despite the challenges she faced after losing her father, she fought tirelessly to overcome her demons, demonstrating immense strength and resilience. Her unwavering spirit and commitment to reclaiming her life were evident to all who knew her. She possessed a heart full of compassion, extending her kindness to everyone. Her infectious smile brightened even the darkest of days, and her generosity knew no bounds. I saw how hard my daughter was working. She had such big dreams and goals that she set for herself. I wish she could have seen the hundreds of people that showed up for her after she passed away. I wish she could have seen the outpouring of love and support, because it is a testament to her beautiful soul. My daughter was always trying to help people. Just a couple of weeks before she passed, she said, "Mom, I feel bad for my friend. Her car is broken and she has no way to get to work. Can you help her, Mom?" Another friend reached out shortly after to tell me that Anastasia made them a necklace to hold their mother's ashes in. You see, this was very common for my daughter. She had empathy for people, and she loved unconditionally. My daughter exemplified the selflessness and empathy our world so desperately needs. My daughter was living her best life when she passed away. She had a job that she absolutely loved, and her coworkers loved her. They even went out to help search for her when she went missing. She had just put money down for an apartment that she was moving into, and she was so proud of herself. I witnessed my daughter blossom into the vibrant, beautiful person she was meant to be. Her last day on earth, she spent the day touring her new apartment and then drove to her grandparents to spend the day with him. This was the last time anyone in our family ever saw Anastasia alive. My daughter died early morning on May 22nd in Kenneth Banville's downtown luxury apartment. I believe my daughter knew that she made a mistake by going there. There is proof in this from all of the consecutive text messages she sent to her friends throughout the evening. For hours, she told her friends she was at a guy's house, she wanted to go home, she didn't feel well, and she had a really bad headache. She explained some girls had shown up and she just didn't want to be there. I also don't know why Kenneth had her leave her car in her work parking garage other than he didn't want her to leave. So if this is an accident, why not call 911? Even if you were afraid of the police catching up with you due to your prior criminal activities, leave the scene and have your roommate call or anyone else call 911. Why not just put her on the sidewalk and walk away? For days I was on the news pleading to find my daughter, and instead of doing the right thing, he used a stolen van and moves her to that vacant home in Slavic Village, the same home he was manufacturing his poison out of. He dumps her there like garbage, he nails the doors down, he opens the windows to avoid any smell. He steals all of her belongings, her Michael Kors purse, her wallet, her iPhone, and even her shoes. He buys a brand new tarp found at the house by the detectives, and he was going to get rid of her forever. All over an accident. What a terrible thing to do to another human being. Anastasia would have never done this to another person. Anastasia would have never left anyone dead. She would have called for help. As we grapple with the unbearable pain of losing my daughter to a lethal dose of fentanyl, we are haunted by the presence of inexplicable injuries on her body. The discovery of a broken neck and extensive bruising on her neck raises deeply troubling questions surrounding her death. Does this defendant sound like someone who has any amount of kindness or remorse in him? He has a complete disregard for human beings. He lacks empathy or concern for other people. He shows no interest in the well-being of others. He is indifferent to the suffering of fellow human beings and demonstrates a callous disregard for the welfare of others. With the amount of people that have reached out to me, we could fill these courtroom walls with photos of their lost loved ones due to the poison Kenneth Banville has been putting into the community since 2009. Hundreds, maybe thousands of lives have been lost due to the actions of the defendant. I am tired of referring to this as an accidental overdose when it should be labeled as poisoning. The defendant has been poisoning our loved ones and has been getting away with it for too long. Kenneth Banville was given multiple chances to change his life and cease his drug-dealing criminal activities, but he deliberately chose not to. It is time for change. We must remove people like him from our streets. The fentanyl epidemic is taking countless lives every day, and we cannot stand idly by. We need to act and make a change to protect our community and save lives. Your Honor, I understand the weight of the responsibility you carry in administrating justice. I stand here today with a heavy heart as I share the devastating loss of my beloved daughter, Anastasia Yvonne Hamilton, who tragically lost her life to a fentanyl overdose, a lethal overdose administered by Kenneth Banville. The pain of losing a child is unimaginable, and the grief that has consumed our family since this fatal day is indescribable. Our lives have been forever altered, and the void he left by her absence is both profound and enduring. I am aware that the defendant has pleaded guilty in this case. While the admission of guilt may seem like an act of remorse, I am deeply skeptical of the sincerity behind this. It is my belief and others that the defendant's motivation for pleading guilty lies not in true remorse, but rather in the hope of receiving a lesser sentence. I ask to please not go lightly on him. Your Honor, I respectfully request that you consider imposing consecutive sentences for the defendant's criminal activities. Running these past crimes consecutively would serve to acknowledge the cumulative impact of his actions and highlight the pattern of disregard for law and the well-being of others. Your Honor, if he is let out too soon, there is a high likelihood that the defendant will continue to inflict harm on others through his drug dealings. Given his lifelong involvement in such activities, it is evident that his behavior is deeply ingrained. Releasing him without a significant period of incarceration would not only put countless lives at risk, but also undermine the effort to curb the drug trade and protect our communities. He will just go back to his criminal life, the only life that he knows. I don't want another parent to have to stand where I stand today. No one else should be put in harm's way. He is a danger to society. It is essential to send a clear message that repeated offenses and a disregard for the law will not be treated lightly or brushed aside. I implore you, Your Honor, to consider the devastating impact of this offense on our community, the value of preserving public safety, and the need for justice to be served. By imposing the maximum sentence and running the defendant's past crimes consecutively, you not only honor the memory of my daughter and so many others that he has killed, but you also send a resolute message that our legal system will not tolerate such destructive behavior. I have had so many families and other people reach out to me since all of this has happened, people that have lost their loved ones because of him. In 2012, he introduced heroin to Julie Pizzanti, and they were girlfriend and boyfriend in high school. Her parents reached out to me immediately when they saw Banville on the news. Their daughter died because of Banville's actions. Another mother who lost her son said Banville is the one who brought the drugs to the Garfield community back in 2009, and so many have lost people because of his actions. These are just a couple of examples of the people that have reached out to me. This is a chance to get justice for everyone Kenneth Banville poisoned and killed. The defendant is also a known predator with women. I believe he does this so that he can have full control over them. I believe that that was his intention with my daughter. I believe he knew she was living her best life, and it was predatory. The devastating consequences of the fentanyl epidemic continue to ravage countless lives across our nation. The poison that flows through the veins of our society must be met with full force of the law in hope of preventing other families from experiencing the same heart-wrenching devastation that has forever changed our lives. Your Honor, I hope you will consider keeping Kenneth Banville incarcerated until he is an old man. Thank you for your time and consideration, Your Honor. We entrust the weight of our hopes for justice upon your shoulders, and we trust that you make a decision that uploads the values of fairness, accountability, and the protection of our communities.
Well, thank you very much for writing your letter previously, and I'm not sure if that's the same one that you just read, but I...
Little different. I changed some things.
You're allowed to. But I want you to know how much I appreciate your letter, your strength and courage throughout the years of dealing with your child and the way that you did. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, Detective Kramer can be heard.
Sure, Detective.
Good afternoon, Judge. Detective Tim Kramer, CRA-MER, badge 346 with Cleveland Homicide. Your Honor, I was the lead detective on this case. And I believe today pleading to this indictment is not an admission, or is an admission, but it's not an admission of the full truth. Ken, I'm sure this is just another one of your many scams to hopefully get less jail time. Because in my investigation, I have found that you are a liar and a scammer. In conducting this investigation, I came to realize how big of a fraud you are. You have pretended to be other people by securing false identification. You have planned to file false tax documents. You use people and social systems for your own good. But not only do you use people and systems, you use drugs, which is a deadly combination. And that is why we are here today. I'm not going to talk about Anastasia, as her mother has already done that. But I am going to address you, Ken. Right now, you could be truthful. But I wonder if you have the ability to be truthful. Knowing what type of person you have been in the past, I wonder if Anastasia even knew your real name. So answer that, Ken. Did she know your real name? Or was she just another one of your scams? She was with you. She died with you. But did she even know your real name? The night of her death, she was texting friends who were struggling with drug use, encouraging them not to break down and not to use drugs. Within hours of those messages, she overdosed. So what happened, Ken? Well, I'll tell the court what happened next. You didn't call 911. You didn't take her to a hospital. In true fashion for Ken Banville, you began a cover-up. You got rid of her possessions, her phone, her shoes. Then you dumped her body in a vacant house, phase 1 complete. And we know you didn't do that by yourself. So be truthful and tell us who helped you. Thankfully, she was found before you could get rid of her body for good. We all know you couldn't keep her in that vacant house because that's where you were manufacturing drugs. So rather than call in an anonymous tip, you gathered a bucket, bleach, rope, and tarp. Eventually you were caught, and the evidence piled up against you. And the DNA evidence arrived. And Ken, we all know DNA doesn't lie. And so despite all of your lies and cover-ups, your own DNA told the truth when you could not. Judge, I ask for a sentence of over 30 years for Ken and all of his lies. Thank you.
Thank you, Detective. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hi.
Could you be kind of tell me your name for the record, please?
Samantha Neal, N-E-E-L. I like to think I was Stasia's best friend, but the truth is, she touched so many people, I don't think she could have just one. I met Stasia sophomore year. She was so shy and quiet, I actually remember thinking there's no cracking this girl. Until one day at lunch, I was telling a story, and I honestly didn't think anyone was listening until I heard a small contagious laugh over to my left. There was Stasia, trying her best to keep it in, but laughing with me. From that moment on, we were inseparable, and I was at her house more than I was at my own. All of my best memories she made. I never knew anyone like her, and honestly, I don't think I ever will. In 2017, Stasia's dad, at the young age of 42, unexpectedly passed away. She acted so strong. However, I knew a big piece of her heart was buried the day he was. That is only because of the depth of her love for the people she cared about. When they were hurting, so was she. At only 20, this caused her to have some struggles. I remember her opening up how he wouldn't get to walk her down the aisle one day, nor meet her one day children. Despite this, something I always admired about her grief was how she grew this empathy to recognize others in pain that many people wouldn't see or just simply ignore. Her struggles may have caused her to get into some trouble, but she never allowed them to change her heart. Stasia was the best I had seen her in the last months of her life. Her passion was real estate. She was natural at it like her mom. I'll never forget her landing a job at K&D Apartments and FaceTiming me excited to show me her office. She talked about going back to school and looking at programs to start in fall in hopes further this career path. This was not just a paycheck to her. She truly enjoyed it, and the dedication she put in her work ethic would prove that. Anastasia was prioritizing time with family and friends, saving money, and had a plan all set up to move into a new apartment. This was until May 22nd when she stopped replying to my text. That night, Stasia told me she did not feel good and that her head was pounding, how the situation was awkward and she wanted to go home. Unfortunately...
Can I ask you just to slow down just a tad?
Sorry.
I know it's important. It's okay.
Okay.
I know it's important that what you have to say we want to hear. So just slow down.
Okay.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, I had fallen asleep. It wasn't until that next morning that I would answer her. However, there was no reply. Within a few short hours, I received a call from her worried mom asking if I had heard from Stage. The not being able to find a person you love who you were just talking to is a horrible and helpless feeling I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy. Growing up, Stasia always advocated driving places, explaining that she always liked having the option to leave anywhere, anytime. Anyone that knew her knew this, which is when panic really started to sink in when her car was discovered at Tower City. However, she was not. Unfortunately, the outcome, as you know, was the one we prayed it wouldn't be. As I had said previously, Stasia had a way of helping others. She saw the unseen. I watched her pay for an elderly people's meals who were eating alone, drive countless hours collecting clothes for the women's shelter, spending her McDonald's paycheck at only $16 on baby supplies to help a single mom she worked with who had no help. Ken Banville did not see her as this person. He saw her as a target. I don't believe he is sorry at all, for he is only sorry he got caught. However, this is not his first time he's been caught. Banville has charges that go back to 2009. He has corrupted countless people with drugs. Which is why I am pleading to give him the maximum sentence. If he had any type of morale, he would have called 911, potentially saving my best friend's life. Instead, he coordinated a plan in hopes he'd have no strings attached to. He could have used that stolen van to drop her off in front of an ER, or even left her where she could have been found a lot sooner. To furthermore demonstrate his zero remorse, he also discarded her phone to prolong the search for her, which is still not yet found, and robbed her of anything of value that was on her, which includes her Nike shoes and Michael Kors purse. He left someone's daughter, sister, and friend alone in an abandoned house on the east side, knowing how desperate we were searching for her, then boarded it up in hopes to mask any smell. He deserves to rot like he left her to. I don't get to curl my best friend's hair, nor tell her stories at her wedding one day. Instead, I had to do it for her funeral. I will never forget that day as much as I would like to. My beautiful friend, with the most softest soul, was covered in bruises. The autopsy report reveals her neck was broken. She had lacerations to her body. I saw them repaint her red nails she had just had done due to being dragged. She did not deserve how she was found, and I hate that I can't bring her back. However, I will do everything in my power to see Anastasia the justice she deserves, and I pray you will do the same. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for taking time to write the letter and come to court today. Thank you.
We have nothing further at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
Anything else on behalf of your fellow prosecutors?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Shaughnessy, anything on behalf of the government, on behalf of the defendant, I will say, I understand that we are here to be sentenced on the charges that he has pled to. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please, the court, certainly nothing I'm about to say is in any way meant to demean the seriousness of what occurred. And it certainly isn't to demean the hurt and the sorrow that the Hamilton family, friends, and the entire community feels when something like this happens. Judge, I think said by Mr. Paul, I'm going to agree. Unfortunately, this isn't the first overdose case we've seen, and unfortunately, it doesn't appear it's anywhere near the last. Those of us that do this every day, between the state courts and the federal courts, we see the stranglehold that these drugs have on our community, especially here in northeastern Ohio. We've seen the harm and the devastation that it's caused, and some of that we see here today. Again, this is not meant to demean what happened. This is kind of sentencing, Your Honor, and I think it's important to look at some of the things about him. He does have a number of family members here present. His mother's here, his sister's here. They all know and acknowledge what Kenneth did. They know that Kenneth has to be held responsible for what he did, and I think Kenneth did that when he pled guilty to the indictments as charged in these cases. Your Honor, they also know what this drug problem has done in our community. Kenneth's brother overdosed and died. And Kenneth has been using these drugs, as you can see by his record, way back to even before 2009. And the hold they have on him. Mr. Paul's right. The court system's tried to give him help, tried to give him rehab. He's had periods of time where he maintained his sobriety, and then that drug rears its head again, and that stranglehold that it has on him has caused him to relapse. And that's what he's been doing in a cycle since 2009. In and out of prison, in and out of treatment, but continuing to use the drugs. Judge, there's no good or bad in what I'm about to say, but there's bad and worse. And I think we look at the folks that cut these drugs with these substances, and they go out and they sell them, and they make a profit, and they get rich, and they're trying to move those things on the streets to others. And then we have somebody that I think falls into Kenneth's circumstance. Again, I'm not saying it's good, but we have a drug addict who's peddling drugs to maintain his habit, and he's using the same drugs that he's peddling, using the same drugs that night that were involved. And he's got that addiction, he's got that problem. I think that that's where Kenneth is. Judge, again, he's pled guilty. He takes full responsibility for his actions. I believe he's truly remorseful for what he did and what he was involved with. I think he's truly ashamed of the actions that he took. And he would like to address you. His sister's also here, judges. If you would allow her just to say a few words, she would like to address the court as well.
At your direction.
And then Kenneth would like to address you.
My name is Stacy Underwood, and I am the sister of Kenneth Banville.
What would you like for me to know, Ms. Underwood?
I know that all of these people say horrible things about my brother, and the addiction that he has created that type of person. But I know him to be a loving brother, a son, and an uncle to my kids. And this drugs has, yes, it has torn us apart with him. But that's not the person that he is. So I'm just asking for a little bit of leniency, because the drugs is what makes him do this. And the drugs is what he's done. Yes, it kills people, and I'm very unfortunate that this lady lost her life, but he was doing the drugs with her. It wasn't his intention to give her drugs to kill her or anything like that. He was doing it to, help his addiction as well. I'm so sorry.
Take your time.
And I do know what it's like, because I lost my other brother to the same addiction. And it's very, very sad. And I'm just asking to have a little bit of leniency on him and not give him the maximum sentence for his crimes. I know he does need to pay for what he has done, but he does need help for his addiction. I just would like you to take that into consideration.
Appreciate you taking the time to come in with your family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kenneth would like to make a statement.
Sure. Just make sure you keep your voice up, Mr. Banville. If you're going to read, just make sure you read slow enough, okay? Go ahead whenever you're ready.
I'm going to earnestly say that I'm sorry to Anastasia Hamilton and the rest of her family. I know there is no way I can give comfort or relief from the tragedy that took place that day. I never meant to hurt anybody. I'm sincerely sorry for what happened. I was in a bad place in my life and not right in my mind. I was doing things and making decisions I shouldn't have been making. I was under the influence of drugs and acting poorly. I wasn't thinking correctly. When I woke up and found her passed, deceased, I went into shock. I made terrible decisions. I was scared. I was terrified and in disbelief. I just wanted to die. I acted irrationally. I didn't think, I just acted. I made terrible decisions, and I listened to people I shouldn't have listened to. Again, I'm sorry. I do not expect forgiveness, but please forgive me for what has happened. I'm sincerely sorry.
Is there anything else you'd like for me to know?
Sorry, Your Honor, this is a tragedy. I never thought this would happen. I was just trying to avoid getting in trouble. I didn't mean to hurt her. I didn't mean for it to happen the way everything happened. It was a terrible, terrible day. It's been a terrible day. That's all I was right now.
Anything else you'd like for me to know?
I'm willing to answer any questions or tell you anything that, the family or anything wants to know.
I'll take a liberty and perhaps speak for their behalf, which is to say that I doubt that there's anything that you could really say that will be satisfactory to the family. Not going to bring her back. Unless there's any particular question that you can think of, Mr. Paul? No. All right. Anything else you'd like for me to know, Mr. Banville? So I'll try to be perhaps a little brief, and I do not in any way want to demean the comments and the effects that the family has had about what Mr. Paul had said about the tragedy of the after the fact here, but from my seat, I feel that we in the system, and perhaps myself, have responsibility here. You came before me in August of 2019, February 2019, on F1 drug trafficking cases, which would have been mandatory time. Perhaps at that point in time, would have been able to get some treatment while in the institution. And had you come back for sentencing in 2019, I think Anastasia would probably still be here with us. So, to an extent, that one's on me. After considering the purposes and principles set forth in felony sentencing, I will find that you are not amenable to a community control sanction. Because you will be receiving a prison sentence here, you'll be subject to PRC. Upon your release, this will be for a mandatory minimum of 2 years up to a maximum of 5 years on the F1 cases, which is 636305, 665107, and 677123. 636305 is a pre-Reagan-Tokes case, if I'm correct. Do you concur, gentlemen? Mr. Maver, the date of the offense, well, he pled on February 28th of 19. I think it was April that Reagan-Tokes went into effect.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right. So on count 3, charge of drug trafficking, sentence will be a 9-year sentence. Impose the mandatory $15,000 mandatory minimum of $10,000 fine. That's on count 3. Count 5 is the charge of drug trafficking is a felony of the 2nd degree. It'll be a 7-year sentence.
It was a 3rd degree.
It was amended. I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Lavelle. So it'll be a 9-month sentence on that count. The count 25, having weapons while under disability, also felony of the 3rd degree, will be a 9-month sentence, and will be a 9-month sentence on count 26, the possessing criminal tools. In case 665107, I don't know if we mentioned, but is the state electing to proceed on the drug trafficking counts in I think we did talk 1, 3, 5, and 7? Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right. And so on each counts 1, 3, 5, and 7 will be a 9-year prison sentence. I believe also the Reagan-Tokes will only apply to one of the sentences in the entire matter. Anybody disagree with that?
No.
All right. So the 9-month sentence on each counts 1, 3, 5, 7. On each count 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 will be a 9-month sentence on each of those counts. In case 672644 will be a 30-month prison sentence on the single count in the indictment there, the F3 escape. In case 677123 on count 1, the involuntary manslaughter will be 11-year sentence with Reagan-Tokes to 16 and a half. Oppose a 12-month sentence on count 2 and a 24-month sentence on count 3. Be a 9-month sentence on count 6. Count 8. Counts 9 and 10. I'm sorry, count 9 rather, 10 merging with 9. And on each count 11, 13, and 15 will be a 9-month sentence that will be served prior to and consecutive to a 1-year sentence on the firearm specification. In case 677123, he'll serve 1 year on the firearm specification. I will run the sentences in counts 1, 6, 8, 9, 11, 13, and 15 concurrently for an aggregate sentence of the 11 to 16 and a half years. The sentences on counts 2 and 3 I will run concurrent with each other, but consecutive to the underlying sentences as I just outlined. Because I do find that consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public from future crimes and to punish the offender, and that consecutive sentences are not disproportionate to the seriousness of your conduct and truly to the danger that you pose to the public. Again, you committed these multiple offenses while you were awaiting sentencing. As has been previously discussed, you have a criminal history which demonstrates that consecutive sentences are necessary to protect you from future crimes, and that at least one or more of these course of conduct and the harm caused by these multiple offenses so committed were so great or unusual that no single prison term for any of these offenses committed as part of the course of conduct would adequately reflect the seriousness of your conduct. So the 9-year sentence in case 636305 will run consecutive to the aggregate sentence of 9 years in case 665107. I'll run the sentence in 672644 concurrent with the sentence in case 677123, but that sentence will run consecutive to the 9 years each in cases 665107 and 636305. I'll find you to be indigent for the purposes of the imposition of the mandatory fine. I'll not impose any other further fines, fees, but I will already pay court costs and let you know you can do court community work service while you're incarcerated to satisfy those costs. You'll be given credit for all time served on these cases. Anything else on behalf of the government?
No, Your Honor.
Anything else, Mr. Shaughnessy?
Just noting our continuing objection to the Reagan Tokes as being unconstitutional.
So noted. Anything else, Mr. Shaughnessy?
No, sir.
All right. Good luck to Mr. Banville, Sheriff of Transport. Again, thank you everyone for coming in. We'll be in recess. You know, right.
All rise. Court's in recess.
So we now see Banville leaving the court. I was taking notes as much as I could, kind of confusing as to at least the way that the judge read that. Now remember, the judge was an hour late to this, so it seemed like he was a little bit rushed toward the end. But confusing as to how they laid out the amount of time here. But it seems like it is 11 to 16 and a half years. But again, really confusing how they laid it out, because he essentially was just, normally a judge will say, hey, we're going to start reading out the amount of time. Here's what it is. That didn't happen. He just kind of started to ramble into it, and basically we got on multiple counts. There were 9 years, 7 years, 9 months, 9 months, 9 years, 9 months, for multiple sentences. So I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure exactly what the total amount of time is in this, because of how confusing it was the way that he explained it. We will try and get the confirmed number, of course, with our CN New Yorker who was on the scene there. You heard from Anastasia Hamilton's mother, her sister, them all talking about how they do not believe that Banville should be allowed to leave court or to be permitted to leave any sort of institution in a fairly decent amount of time because of how dangerous they believe that he is to the public. All right, our CN New Yorker will have much more on this tonight on 19 News. Of course, our news is continuing over on CBS from 4 until 6:30, and the newscast is continuing from our 3 o'clock session as well. For now, I'm Jeff Salsa with 19 News. Have a great day. Much more to come, both on air and online.
19 News, now streaming on Samsung Smart TV. Search for channel 1035.